Hey everyone, your logical libertarian here. We're going to be discussing today the topic of democratic socialism, or rather just strictly socialism. Because democratic socialism is socialism, no matter what you try to say. It's a way of trying to downplay it. As you can say, socialism has a spectrum. You could say that democratic socialism might be closer to what we have today, where communism is further on the end of the spectrum. You could also probably replace it, if you look at socialism on a spectrum, replace it with Marxism in that context. Some people like to say that socialism is a step between communism and maybe what we have today. It's a lot closer to maybe what other more liberal Western countries have. But essentially, that's what's going on. So first we're going to kind of read over some of it, because economic progressivism is what we live in today. And it's kind of a socialism. I consider it limited capitalism. It's defined as economic liberalism, economic libertarianism, It depends. But economic progressivism typically is seen as being anti-capitalist, and the belief is, and I said it's based off Kenyanism and Marxism, but the belief is that in a more free market, large corporations and the wealthy end up always winning. Now, there's a problem with that statement, and that is when you're looking on the large scale, when you're looking on a national scale, yes and no. Corporations can benefit, but they have to build to become a corporation in the first place. Corporations don't exist in a vacuum, nor do they appear out of nowhere. Corporations are built, and corporations start from the small scale and work their way up. And new ones are always coming up, and old ones are falling. In a truly free market, old ones can fail. However, in a corporatist market, which is more of what we have today, they're not allowed to fail. The state doesn't let corporations fail for the same principles that we have economic progress. We push a more economically progressive system, which is the fear of people being without. You don't let a corporation that employs, 1 million people or a few 100,000 people fall because now those people are out of jobs. That's why. And it's in a sense a way to, it's spending a little bit now to save them, to prevent the state from having to pay all of the social safety net costs for when those people need that help. As well as maintaining tax revenue from them. So it's kind of 50-50. For me, when the state becomes so heavily involved in market affairs, I guess you could say, in the private sector, you end up creating a very bad system. A system that doesn't naturally flow, but instead kind of works against itself, backs up, and creates a lot of problems. To me, it's kind of like damming up a river. It's going to cause flooding, and you're going to have it break eventually, and it creates more issues in my mind than it solves. And you destroy your natural resources. You have more droughts because of it. Like, there's a lot that comes to trying to put people's economic instincts, I guess you could say, to put it in a regulated box. Now, I understand having some social safety nets. Things like a minimum wage, maybe not as high as people want, but having one is nice. I think in a capitalist system, a free market, you can have unions because it's a private thing. However, I don't agree with having all these extra protections for unions. Having things like public education, I agree with. Social Security, I'm 50-50. I agree with it to a certain point. I agree with emergency services. I do agree with having some health care for people, some things covered on the public dole. And, like I said, I do agree with social safety nets. However, I don't support that because of the idea that, well, the wealthy make so much, they should pay for the poor who struggle. I believe that the poor who struggle deserve a little bit of help to get out of it. And that's the main point. They're not going to be perpetually poor. These people aren't going to always be needing the state. They're going to be getting help and getting out. They'll need food stamps for 6 months until, maternity leave's over, or their legs healed, or whatever, and they get back on it. And that's what we should do too. We should push for people to get back on it. I'm very much in favor of having educational programs to help people learn, to get certified, to learn, and have it be open for everybody. If it can be open for the poor, I think it should be open for everybody. But to have people be able to learn skills so that way they can actually be useful in the free market, for sure. So that's what I agree with. I agree with socialism on the aspect of providing tools and services. But I don't agree with socialism on trying to force equality of outcome when it comes to market situations. That's where I disagree, and that's where I think it's really difficult. And that's where socialism and capitalism are different. And in a capitalist society, you could have it to where in a democracy, or any form of democracy like a republic where we live, you can have it be where that republic decides, okay, we have a state, we want that state to cover this and that and this and that, and that state being our money is what's covering it, and we elect these people to oversee that. That's fine. If the people choose to do that, that's fine. That's a part of having a government, is you can provide those services for yourself. You're essentially collectively agreeing to provide those services for you. It's not being given to you by some foreign entity or some cosmic being. You are electing it yourself. However, when it gets to be, oh, well, we want the rich who have worked to make so much money, who have worked to earn their way to being wealthy, buying property, who employ people. We want them to start paying more taxes because we're mad that we're not them, because that's what it mostly comes down to. It's jealousy and envy of those who have more. Well, then you're not in a good system. It's becoming hostile towards those who within the system. I guess this is a very libertarian stance of mine. It's very aggressive. And essentially comes from the fact that, it would be like this. Say that you have a population of people and the majority only have 9 fingers, but some have 10. Well, then the 9-fingered people decide that, no, everybody should have 9 fingers, so they take the 10-fingered people and chop off their fingers. That is essentially socialism and communism, but on the economic scale. And it's also stating that those maybe who have made prosthetic fingers for themselves or found other ways to work around it, they are robbed of that. They're saying, no, you don't get your prosthetic fingers. We take it away and everyone gets to use it whenever they want. Well, no. That person made it. It's their property. They can deal with it. That is the way capitalism works. That is the system we're in. You keep what you make. You pay your dues to the state and you keep what you make. And you're paying your dues to the state is paying your dues to everybody. It's agreeing to live in the system. That's what taxes are. If you don't want to live in the system, then move. But that's the difference. That's the major difference, and the difference I really don't like. But let's hear what someone else has to say about it. And again, I'll explain it. Because a lot of people make this argument, and I don't like it.
And finally, since no one is truly happy living a lie and denying who they really are, I want to direct this rule at a certain group of people and say to them, new rule, it's time to stop fighting it and just come out of the closet. And the group I'm talking about is the American public, and the love that they're denying is their love of socialism.
No, what do you mean?
Now, I know that there are a few words in America more toxic than socialist, and these days big government spending is about as popular as Casey Anthony at a Chuck E. Cheese.
I still like Bill Myers jokes. That's pretty good.
Yes, Americans say they hate socialism, but when it comes to Social Security, Medicare, unemployment, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, corporate welfare, bailouts, and farm subsidies, what we really say to socialism is, I can't quit you.
No, I agree there, and I disagree with half the ones you said. I don't agree with Mac and Fay, corporate bailouts, corporate welfare, or any subsidies to any business. But again, that's just me. But what can I do? But yeah, there are some of those I do agree with, but as again I've said, they're based off services. It's not trying to keep a market afloat.
Americans don't want less spending on health care. By almost 2 to 1, they want more. Only 7% of Americans are willing to do away with either Social Security or Medicare, and even 62% of Tea Party members say those programs are worth the cost, yet 91% of them say they want smaller government with fewer services.
Yeah, but I just mentioned ones you could cut out. And also, there's a difference. You're conflating that they want smaller government with fewer services. It means they want a lot of time, the Tea Party position has always been, get rid of the alphabet soup. It means that they want to limit the government and cut out most of the bureaucracies that are pointless and oftentimes redundant, which many of them are in agree with. Many libertarians are in agree with. There are many liberals and conservatives that are in agree with this. So, again, false equivalency.
They're like the guy who's been to prison and says, sure, I gargle with a guy's balls every once in a while, and there's nothing I love more than ass play with other men, but you know who I can't stand? Fags. Remember this guy, the keep your government hands off my Medicare guy? He's not alone. In one survey, 40% of people who get Medicare say they have not used a government program.
That's funny.
Really? Who do you think paid for that hip replacement? Your Secret Santa? The actor and not very bright person, Craig T. Nelson, once said about hitting some rough spots in his life that, quote, I've been on welfare and food stamps, but anybody help me out? No. Or take Michelle and Marcus Bachmann, or as I like to think of them, America's indoor Palins.
That's funny.
Yes, the Bachmans, tireless advocates of cutting people off from the government tit. Well, it turns out they live on the tit. Their farm takes farm subsidies. Their counseling clinic takes Medicaid. and their mortgage was underwritten by Freddie Mac. Michelle knows civil servants are evil because she was an IRS agent, and Marcus hates government employees because sailors are so rough. But come on, if hypocrisy was uranium, they could power the planet. And that's what's so hard about being a closeted lover of big government. You have to lie to yourself. But that's why I'm here tonight with a special message for all you deniers. It gets better. Yes, there are millions of people in the world just like you, in nice places like Switzerland and Sweden. They enjoy high standards of living and freedom, and they're socialists. Studies show they're actually happier than we are, and that's not surprising, because the only difference between American socialism and European socialism is European socialism works. For their tax dollars, Europeans get full health care coverage, a generous pension, daycare, long paid vacations, maternity leave, free college, and public transportation that doesn't smell like pee. Whereas our tax dollars go towards military bases in Germany, subsidies to oil companies, building bridges to nowhere, wars, and putting half of Cheech and Chong in prison.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, though. That's the part of American socialism that I'd like to cut. I wouldn't mind keeping all the stuff that is good. However, doing away with a lot of the bad is what we need to do. Things like public transportation are a good service to provide. But yeah, having such a heavy prison population for stupid shit like drugs and prostitution, no, we should do away with that. Same with gambling. It should only be held for people who commit actual crimes, which are assault and theft. Those are the only two actual crimes. Any actual crime that actually harms someone, will fall under the categories of assault or theft, murder, rape, assault, and theft, assault. Damage to property, assault. Kidnapping, assault. Obviously robbery and burglary are theft. Fraud is theft. It's identity theft. Those are the only two real crimes you should put people away for. Everything else, no. No. Oh, you bought some drugs. Oh, well. Oh, you're selling sex. Oh, well. Oh, you're gambling. Oh, well. Those are things that should not be illegal. And the prison population should be greatly reduced, yeah. There's a lot we should have. However, the socialism, the difference is it's not a make everybody equal or make an opportunity of outcome. And the other thing too is a socialist nation also typically has a taxation bracket that is very, very staggered. I don't agree with that either. Everyone should pay the same percentage. If we're all supposed to be equal, everyone pays the same percentage. Everyone pays like 18% or 17% or 20%. That's what everybody pays. And then I would also argue implementing a 1% federal service tax, sale and service. That's pretty much a 1% consumption or transaction tax. So that way, anytime you buy something, whether it's buying a service, buying a product, buying a house, whatever, you pay that 1% tax. And that's going to hit the rich the most because they're going to be buying more often. They're going to be buying more expensive things more often. And the poor people are going to be buying a lot cheaper things less often. So, it's going to affect the rich the most. And it's going to keep that balance. But you do need to make a lot of government cuts. I do agree with having a military and everything else. I don't agree with having a military spread out as much. We should definitely reel it in. Not the personnel part, but how far we go. Takes up a shit ton of fuel to fly so many people all across the world. And not to mention just those people, but all the other military equipment we have to carry that's heavy, like tanks and everything. Yeah, it's expensive. But that's just me, and I agree with getting away with subsidies like farm subsidies, any business subsidies, anything like that. If you want to get a loan, business loan, go to a bank.
They get universal health care. We get a Blue Angels flyover at the Fiesta Bowl. They get paid maternity leave. We get the Octomom. They've got Airbus. We've got the bus. Isn't there anything we still do better? Even their paranoid, racist loners look like speed skaters. And ours look like Porky Pig. All right, that's our show. You can see me at the Brit Festival in Jacksonville, Oregon on August 26th. I want to thank my guests, Elliot Spencer, Margaret Hoover, Matt Kibbe, Brian Cranston, and Harry Markopolis. Don't forget to watch us now on Overtime.
But yeah, that's the difference. I would definitely say that I'm more in favor of I'm not in favor of complete anarchy or complete dissolution of the state, even though there's an anarcho-capitalist thing in here. I'm not in favor of anarcho-capitalism necessarily. I'm in favor of a more limited, or I guess a less limited version of capitalism, but I don't agree with anarchy, as I've already said in previous live streams. I think that it leads to anarchy either way, leads to violent takeover by those who would. You don't have your collective power of a united group of people with similar who agree to. No, you don't have the social contract power of a state when you're in an anarchist position. So you're a lot more fragmented, a lot more spread out, and a lot smaller. You don't have that herd power, and without that, you are easily taken over. You lose the security of those numbers. You lose that. And when I mean security, I don't mean like, oh, those who would trade safety for security. Don't know. It's not that, because you are literally trading your safety with becoming anarchist, with losing any sort of state. You become just a bunch of small pockets and towns that are going to be overrun. You become liable to look like Mexico, because while they have a government, their government's shit, and in many pockets that might as well be anarchist, and the cartels took over. That's what would happen. LA would just be a gang area. Oakland would just be a gang area. And then it would be pocket areas of armed citizens fighting to not be in gang areas, and that's what it would look like. There would be some nice places. It would not be a utopia. Nowhere near. And there's also no such thing as a utopia. And that's the big thing, I think. The problem I have with a lot of people who propose all these different economic and political ideas, they push these as if it would make a utopia. As if these things happened, everything could just be perfect. Even Bill Maher was saying, oh, well, European socialism, it's so great. No. They're struggling to stay afloat, and a lot of times their medical practices, it takes a long time to get anything done. It takes months or years to get anything you need, and when it comes to medicine, you need it now. You need to have a mixed system, perhaps. One that covers things that you should get, but allows insurance to cover other things. And you need to lighten up on the FDA. The FDA needs to be changed and limited. It needs to allow more that honestly has no reason to not be allowed. And you need to cut its power, because it favors certain groups and very much favors the pharmaceutical industry. And that's the issue. So we need to look at the fact that we're having so many bureaucracies and having so many people who work in these bureaucracies be from other industries who they have contacts there, or people in the committees that oversees bureaucracies be lobbied by these industries. That's a big issue. That's something we want to get away from. That's corporatism. That's corporatism, which is using socialist practices to favor corporations. Now, again, I'm in favor of a more looted system, but decent public services are important. But there's a difference between public services and enforced equality. And some people would say, well, that's the difference between socialism and communism, but I would say no. Most capitalist nations that have a state are going to have public services. That is a part of the government. That's a part of the contract we have with the government and the Constitution. They're to promote the general welfare. They're to provide services, to aid in our safety, our happiness, our protection of property, our protection of our rights. That's how it's going to be. So we have welfare. We'll have unemployment and food stamps and, welfare paychecks, that kind of stuff. Oh well. People will use it a bit, they'll get on their feet, and they'll be fine. It's okay. But because we have some systems like that, because we have some programs like that, that doesn't mean that we should embrace the entirety of socialism, the entirety of communism. It doesn't mean we should embrace the tediousness and the extreme, like our government's already bloated. To bloat it even more would be irresponsible. It needs to be thinned. It needs to be cut down. And yeah, I agree. It's hypocritical whenever conservatives, Republicans talk about wanting to make smaller government. And they bloat the government just as much as liberals do. Look at Trump and what he's doing. Bloating the government. They just bloat the government all the time. That's why libertarians get pissed off when conservatives say they're libertarian, because libertarians wouldn't bloat the government. They would do what they could to limit it. You need to limit the government. You need to rein it back. You need to limit its power. But I don't know. I think we won't really be able to have a good conversation about this until we start being honest. Until people start admitting, yeah, we use some public programs, but that doesn't mean we should adopt European socialism. And yeah, we need to cut, when people say they're in favor of small government, they should be in favor of small government, One of the things when it came to me when I was young about I remember using conservative logic to favor abortion rights and gay marriage. And it's the government doesn't really have a right to tell you what to do. They shouldn't be in your bedroom. They shouldn't be in your life. You're not harming anyone. Now you can make an argument for abortion if you're harming someone, and that's fine. People who have a logically sound argument, well, a logically valid argument, their principle, they're reasoned. So I understand that. But you can't say that you're in favor of it and want a limited government. I don't see that. Anyway. It's a short one today, but that's what I wanted to talk about. I could go on more about economics, but it'd just be a rant that kind of gets off the rails, so we'll just kind of stop that there. Thanks anybody who's been watching. You guys have a good one. Bye.